समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
As India confronts the turbulent, volatile, and dangerous situation in Bangladesh, there are two more questions that New Delhi has to confront. One, is Bangladesh in danger of becoming the next Pakistan? And two, whether Pakistan and China are now converging with this regime in Bangladesh to work against India. In a moment from now, we'll be joined by former Foreign Secretary and top diplomat Kanwal Sibal to talk about how the Modi government should respond hereafter to the unraveling situation in Bangladesh ahead of elections to be held in that country. But also remarks made by former diplomat Ambassador Mohan Kumar on this program, suggesting that India should negotiate the exit of Sheikh Hasina, have also triggered fierce pushback. We'll be talking about all of that in this special broadcast. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo Story. That Pakistan is fishing in troubled waters in Bangladesh should come as no surprise to India. A rapprochement between Pakistan and Bangladesh has been in the works and under the Yunus regime has only got stronger. In fact, Sheikh Hasina's son has been on record to say that terror groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba are now finding renewed impunity with which they can operate. As Mohammed Yunus meets with the Pakistan High Commissioner in Dhaka, and that timing is important, the fact is that Pakistan is now using this regime and this situation and this phase of tensions between Delhi and Dhaka to further its own anti-India agenda. As Bangladesh is rocked by pan-Islamist mobs and their violence, mobs that did not even spare media houses that had been critical of the Sheikh Hasina government, the question is whether Bangladesh is in danger of going the Pakistan way. In the midst of all of this, the Meghalaya police has refuted what it calls the false narrative of Bangladesh that killers linked to Usman Hadi, the anti-India student leader who was shot dead, have escaped into India. Meghalaya police said this was simply false after Dhaka police made such a claim. There are also questions mounting and a debate raging over whether Sheikh Hasina should be allowed to make political speeches from Indian soil, where she continues to basically be protected from what many believe would simply be her assassination if she were ever sent back to Bangladesh in these circumstances. There are also those who've suggested that it's time that India relooks its offer of exile, or at least for the moment exile, to Sheikh Hasina. To talk about all of this, let me welcome our newsmaker to the program today, Mr. Kanwal Sibal, top diplomat, former Foreign Secretary, is with us. Always a pleasure, sir. Let me start by asking you your perspective on the overall situation. It's been one day of turmoil after the other, whether it is Bangladesh's own internal security situation, the targeted violence against religious minorities, including the Hindu community, and the torching of media houses that were in fact critical of the Hasina regime. How dangerous, how inflammable is this situation from an Indian perspective?
Well, we have gone through very difficult situations with Bangladesh, so it's not new. After all, the father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was assassinated. It's just fortunate that Sheikh Hasina and her sister escaped that massacre. And there has been military rule in Bangladesh. We've had BNP governments in power, which have been very unfriendly to India. In fact, the BNP government was in power when I was Foreign Secretary, and I was involved in discussions with them. They were very defiant. In fact, they refused to acknowledge that they were harboring anti-Indian insurgents on Bangladesh soil. They didn't want at all to talk about any transit arrangements between India and Bangladesh. That was a political no-no. on the issue of illegal migration from Bangladesh to India. They refused absolutely to acknowledge that there was any such thing. And then, of course, you know that there have been elections in which one party has not participated. BNP has boycotted the elections. A couple of elections have been held without the BNP participation. The two ladies, Sheikh Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina, have been at loggerheads with each other. There have also been trials that Sheikh Hasina held of people who had been involved in pillage and rape and mass killings during the liberation struggle. So there have been all these ups and downs in Bangladesh itself, which has had repercussions on our bilateral ties. And there has been also issues of Hindu minority in Bangladesh, even during Sheikh Hasina's time, although the government was very sympathetic and cooperative. Yet we have seen that the minorities have been targeted, and there has been a steady depletion in numbers of Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. So there has been, ever since Bangladesh became independent, a lot of ups and downs in our relationship. I forgot
But
to mention
what is
that
new about this situation? What is particularly new and different or distinct, if any, about this situation?
no, one additional point before I come to this is that in the case of water sharing, Ganga Waters Treaty, Bangladesh took the matter to the United Nations. The Tista issue has also been very problematic for us. So there has been all this. Now, with regard to the present situation, there are some new additional elements that are making the whole situation very complicated for us. One is that there is now a disavowal of the liberation struggle of Bangladesh. They are trying to rewrite history. All those elements who were against the independence struggle, those pro-Pakistan elements, the Jamaat-e-Islami and others, they have now acquired a great deal of power, political power on the ground. With the student movement that occurred, so-called student movements, but I don't know how genuine the student movement was and how much it was infiltrated by these Islamist elements. As in Nepal, there has been a total upheaval of the system. We find that a person like Muhammad Yunus has been installed by foreign powers as the chief advisor, contrary to any provision of the
foreign powers or American powers.
Well, basically, US, yes, of course. He's been installed there, and there has been probably a political design behind this in terms of what they want from Bangladesh in the future. So he has no administrative experience. He's been mollycoddling the Islamist elements. And astonishingly, and that surprised me, that when he was in Washington and was feted by the Clinton Foundation, publicly he said that it was a very meticulously planned operation. And he presented the man behind this meticulously planned operation, Mahfouz Islam, presented him to the audience, which actually therefore means that it was not a spontaneous uprising of the street of the students, but there was a methodology behind it. They sort of used the issue of the reservations for the victims of the 1971 massacre and all that. They used that High Court, the review petition or appeal, whatever that was, to use that occasion to provoke this street uprising, etc., etc. And then you find that all the symbols and sites and locations that were associated with the liberation struggle with the Sheikh Mujibur Rahman have been vandalized. The judges were forced to resign. So in other words, complete lawless situation, and minorities have been targeted. So the new element in this, the principal element is that now those forces outside the two main party system, the BNP and the Awami League are now controlling the situation, political situation in Bangladesh. And number two, this progressive reconciliation with Pakistan, with the invitation to the Joint Chiefs of Staff of Pakistan, I think he came, as well as the ISI chief, shows that there's a message being sent to India that Bangladesh and Pakistan are, the implications of Bangladesh and Pakistan coming together would be understood by India, that the Sheikh Hasina government's tenure, which saw a huge amount of interlinkages that got developed between India and Bangladesh, that is being put into question, and that Bangladesh wants to expand its partnerships with other countries.
Let me ask you about Pakistan. Let me ask you specifically about Pakistan. We have seen, as you mentioned, a progressive sort of rapprochement. It's now gone well beyond a rapprochement, a progressive sort of partnership being sought to be built by the Asim Munir regime and the Muhammad Yunus regime. Tariq Rahman, Khalida Zia's son, who returned to Bangladesh after a long time, 18 years, I think, in his speech, he spoke about equidistance from Rawalpindi and Delhi. What are the implications of someone like Tariq Rahman possibly winning an election in which the Awami League, that's Sheikh Hasina's party, has been excluded? What are the implications for India, especially when it comes to the Pakistan dimension? Do you really believe that the next government that follows this regime will be equidistant, or do you believe it will lean towards Islamabad?
Couple of things. That BNP has been in power in Bangladesh, so they have, even though we had problems with them, but they know the dimensions of exercising political power in Bangladesh in the context of relationship with India. And all that has already been established in terms of cooperation between the two countries, which is of great advantage to Bangladesh itself, I suppose would be seen by responsible politicians as something that should be preserved to the extent possible. In other words, the expectation would be that he would act responsibly. Number two, he has a checkered past. I mean, he was involved in gun running. He was involved in arms smuggling to provide arms to the insurgents that were operating from Pakistani soil. We've been in touch with him in the past. That is the second thing, that we know what his background is. The third thing is that he has now got a chance to come and exercise power in Bangladesh. He will, I think, act much more responsibly than the Jamaat-e-Islami and all those extremist elements that are operating on the ground, because he has a party behind him, the BNP. And the BNP is very keen, actually, to come back to power. They want the elections to be held so that they can get that opportunity to exercise power. Now, once he becomes, let's see if he does, BNP wins. Now, of course, we have to see BNP and Jamaat coming together, and how much influence Jamaat will have on the BNP. Will BNP have a free hand? Will they have also to make concessions to BNP in terms to the Jamaat in terms of relationship with Pakistan and with India, etc., etc. These are things that will play out in due course, assuming that elections are held and BNP wins. But I think, given the chance that he now has to put Bangladesh back on his feet, given all the problems that Bangladesh is facing and will face in the future, while the relationship with Pakistan that can give a lot of emotional and political satisfaction to a lot of people on the Islamic extremists in Bangladesh, the reality is that the nature of relationship with India is such that Bangladesh has to manage its relationship with India, even as it develops new linkages with Pakistan. So when he says that he will want to be equidistant between India and Pakistan, it's a political platform that he is announcing. I think even if it is not equidistance in a mathematical sense, the advantage in this for us would be that the backslide in our ties with Bangladesh, the further deterioration of our ties with Bangladesh, hopefully would be arrested. But the challenge of Pakistan now finding its feet on the ground in Bangladesh and some of the consequences of that we'll have to deal with.
Yeah. Now, I saw your very interesting, detailed comment on some remarks made on this very program, not just by Bangladeshi guests, but also by former Indian Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar, who is saying that it is time for India to negotiate Hasina's exit to a third country as part of striking a deal with Dhaka. Now, I know you, of course, completely disagreed with these comments, as did many of your colleagues. Just for our audience who may not have seen these comments, I'm just going to play out a small clip, and then I want to ask you, how should India handle the Hasina challenge? There are those who've suggested she should be asked to keep quiet while she's here. There are others who are saying we have to send her away, not back to Dhaka, but somewhere else. Let's take a look, and I'll come right back.
You're not going to like my response. A lot of my colleagues won't like the response. At some point, we will have to negotiate her exit from India to someplace else, frankly, because Bangladesh is a sensitive, important relationship. And I think if we have to, maybe you're actually making me say that this could well be the deal in terms of allowing Awami League to participate in elections and maybe find a safe exit for Sheikh Hasina. I don't know if there is enough time to do that. But I think for me, everything else can be managed. But we cannot have a flawed election in which Jamaat comes number one and says, listen, we have won this election free and fair and square, and therefore we will rule. But let
me ask you, you're basically saying that a negotiation could be in the back channels, let the Awami League participate, and we should negotiate. We should say we're ready to have Sheikh Hasina leave India, not for Bangladesh, but to some other country.
Absolutely. Or at a minimum, say that, listen, you cannot have political activities. Do you see the Dalai Lama making comments about China's internal affairs? It's a bit.
Now, you clearly didn't agree with that. And for those who may not have read your very detailed analysis on X, I'm going to ask you why you so strongly disagree. What Ambassador Kumar there is arguing is, if we want the Awami League to take part in the next election, so far they're completely excluded, we need a deal. The deal could be Sheikh Hasina goes to wherever else and the Awami League takes part. You have said that this is absolutely egregious to make this argument, and I'd like our audience to understand in detail why you so fiercely disagree with this.
A few things. That are we the leaders now of the Awami League, now that Sheikh Hasina is exactly in India, that we took over the leadership on our behalf, and that we negotiate with Muhammad Yunus or whoever else that, look, let's have a deal that we'll send her out of the country and let Awami League. In other words, the kiss of death to Awami League right from the start. They should be seen as a party that is being promoted by India and is going to do India's work in Bangladesh and look after India's interests in the Bangladesh. This is how it will be there. I frankly think it is stupid to follow that line of approach at all. Number one. Number two, do you think that why are we assuming that if we made this offer, the other side will agree? After all, they have gone far ahead in terms of banning Awami League from participating in the elections. And supposing now they overturned that ban, and it became clear that they overturned the ban because India intervened. Now we are directly interfering in the election process in Bangladesh. Is that a wise thing to do? It'll be hugely embarrassing. And more so if they maintain the ban and say that we resisted all the efforts, under the table efforts that were made by India to allow the Awami League to participate, and question our intentions in doing so, and then use that as an argument that we criticize the West for interfering in the internal affairs of others and in the internal affairs of India. We are pretty sensitive about that. And here we are ready to interfere in the internal affairs of Bangladesh and in the election process.
I hear you, but for those in Bangladesh who often ask us, you've picked a side. Sheikh Hasina is in your country, you've picked a side. What should India's response be?
No, it's not that. After all, who brought her here? It's the Pakistan Army chief who brought her here, and brought her here in what?
Bangladesh
Sorry.
Army chief.
Sorry.
Freudian slip. At this point, Freudian slip, but do go ahead. Yes.
Mistake.
Yeah.
Brought by the, we are thinking about Asim Munir all the time, and his shenanigans, and therefore he's on our mind. But by the Bangladesh Army chief, and in a Bangladesh Army plane. And not because the assumption was that she had committed any war crime, but that she herself was in physical danger. And given the fact that there was lawlessness and that she could actually be physically eliminated and killed. And that's how she was brought here. And even at that stage, we made it very clear that she's welcome to come here and she can stay as long as she likes. Our foreign minister has said that more than once. We have left entirely the choice to her to decide where she might want to go. If she wants to stay in India, she's welcome to stay in India. We have said that more or less pretty clearly. Number two. Number three, assuming for a moment that the extradition process is activated. This is now a hypothesis. And Sheikh Hasina goes to the Indian courts to appeal against that. It will be a long, drawn-out process where all the evidence which presumably may have been collected against her would be examined in great detail, and it will be seen whether there's any substance to it. Don't forget that the UN Secretary General's office and the human rights fellows, even the Amnesty, have criticized the manner in which this trial took place. In 3 months, they did this. It's a highly complicated trial, and they didn't meet the what is required in terms of a fair trial. The judges were those who actually had been targeted during Sheikh Hasina's own regime. So it was flawed process. So therefore, when our courts, assuming that it goes that far, examine the whole thing, in fact, all the deficiencies in the judgment will become very clear, and in fact, the Bangladesh can be hugely embarrassed when all the flaws and deficiencies in the judgment are made clear. And of course, the fact that she was sentenced to death makes it even more difficult for any government, not only the Indian government, in such a situation to agree to extradition. Quite apart from the fact that in the extradition treaty itself, apart from the political clause, which can be interpreted this way or that way, there's another clause which applies to this particular case, and under which, in fact, we can reject extradition even without the whole thing going to a court of law. Now, when it comes to what has been referred to as making speeches on Indian soil and that, I don't think that. Look, there are two things. One is that if you were to make speeches which are intended to incite violence, incite physical street resistance to the existing government there, that would be problematic. That would be problematic. But insofar as criticizing, not criticizing, stating a case is concerned, and expressing concern about the situation on the ground, including how it affects relations with India, I think there is nothing particularly wrong. And what you quoted as one of our colleagues as having said about the Dalai Lama and all is factually wrong. Factually wrong. The Dalai Lama has been criticizing over the years Chinese handling of Tibet. He's even criticized the Chinese leadership, their mentality. He called them narrow-minded and this and that. So it's not true. And so therefore, to use the argument that, since the Dalai Lama has not been making any speeches, which is wrong, criticizing China, and therefore Sheikh Hasina doing that is unacceptable, is a false argument. But I would agree that if she were to be too active in terms of interfering in the election process from Indian soil, this can be a little diplomatically.
But what is the appropriate balance to find? Because Dalai Lama, for example, there is an entire Tibetan government in exile. It has a prime minister. The government is in exile in India. So there's no question that the Dalai Lama is not only a spiritual leader. He has opinions about the issue of Tibet and he expresses them. The Tibetan government in exile exists and operates out of India. But Bangladesh, I would imagine, is a little more complicated. The security interests, the sensitivities involved are a little more immediate because there is the geographical fact of this shared border. There are Pakistan's interests and so on. Where do we find the right balance in saying Hasina can say this, but she can't say this?
No, I would disagree with that. Dalai Lama himself has been criticizing Chinese policies in Tibet, but their spokespersons, their Sikyong, he's been very critical of China, very critical. And they have been time and again talking about the history of Tibet, how it was an independent country.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the fact that the government exists in exile means that there is politics.
And we have a far more formidable adversary in China, which actually is occupying parts of our territory.
Yeah.
And we are involved in a direct military confrontation with that country. And it is playing, from our point of view, politics in our neighborhood at the cost of our legitimate interests. There is this maritime threat that is mounting up from China. So in terms of strategic adversarial relationship, the problems we have with China are far greater, far deeper. We don't need Quad to deal with Bangladesh. We need Quad to deal with China. And Bangladesh is very vulnerable. Look at the disparity in military power between the two countries. Two things. After Operation Sindoor, I think the message has gone around to all our neighbors that if a certain level of the threshold is crossed in terms of our vital national interest, that India is willing to take strong action. This includes our suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty. So beyond a certain point, if Pakistan was to use Bangladesh soil and conduct a Pahalgam 2 kind of an operation in India, I think those who would be involved in this would have to take into account the possibility of a very strong Indian reaction. So I don't think, and Bangladesh is dependent on us in so many ways. We don't have to twist their arms beyond a certain point. We have to take a long-term view. We should be patient, as we have been with the Maldives, and not react, unnecessarily to every provocation that comes from there. But we are making concerns known, and we should wait, and now we should see what happens after the elections and what the lay of the land is if the BNP comes to power.
I completely take your point about China being a much more formidable adversary, and yet the Dalai Lama being able to operate with freedom, the Tibetan government in exile being able to exist as well from India. But I want to ask you about this comment you just made. You said if Pakistan wants to use Bangladesh soil for a Pahalgam 2, is that now very much your concern? I know it's the concern of many military veterans as well that I've been speaking to. Hasina's son has gone on record to say that there may have even been a credible link between the Delhi Red Fort blast and, according to him, terror groups that now have new freedom in Bangladesh. Is this very much your concern now, sir?
I think our agencies would be monitoring very carefully what might be happening on the ground, because a person like Asim Munir, given his own highly Islamist Hindu baiting thinking, might actually engage in that kind of adventurism through Bangladesh because of deniability also. So this is something we'll have to watch very carefully. There are a lot of illegal Bangladeshi migrants in this country. So there is also potential body of people on the ground. We don't need very many large number of people, but a few who could be motivated and radicalize and do something of that kind. Yes, this is a concern that would be there and would have to be monitored very carefully. But I would not immediately say that it is something imminent or something which will definitely happen, because at the end of the day, I think those who are governing Bangladesh and those who are behind the change of regime in Bangladesh would have to look at very carefully at what potential problem this could cause to India-Bangladesh relationship, and Bangladesh in particular, were India to be targeted with a major attack with links with Bangladesh.
Let me ask you a final question on that somber note. Do you see at all any sort of signs of an off-ramp, or do you believe that any de-escalation will have to wait till the elections? And if the Awami League is excluded from these elections, and it is, the BNP, for example, that is favored to return, though some suggest that Jamaat may dramatically improve its performance, how do you in the interim think India should respond? We've had theories ranging all the way from India has the option to cut off electricity, a la what happened in Operation Sindoor in Pakistan with Indus Water Treaty, to those suggesting a more dialogue-oriented approach, even suggesting military-to-military contacts between India and Bangladesh. What would be your counsel to the government at this point?
I would say that we should explore all diplomatic options. Remember, look at the disparity between India and Bangladesh in every way. So it is incumbent on us as the much stronger power, much more responsible power, with much wider global interests and regional interests, of course, not to act, in a reciprocal manner and deal with Bangladesh as if it was a peer power which we have to deal with. I think we can be a little careful, think of the long term, engage them, use every means that we have of diplomacy to reach out to the forces in Bangladesh, play for time, see how the thing pans out, see if there is a recognition in Bangladesh increasingly that they are vulnerable and they have to maintain good ties with India. Even now they're asking for 50,000 tons of rice from us. So after they have bought 50,000 tons from Pakistan at much higher cost. You mentioned electricity. You mentioned other links that are there. There's the issue of minorities and all the people who go to and fro, medical treatment, what have you. So there are a lot of linkages which were established during the Sheikh Hasina period, which are highly advantageous to Bangladesh, as to us too. And therefore, the hope would be that while this turbulent phase is problematic for Bangladesh internally and for us, that after elections, maybe things begin to settle down. So we have to play a calibrated game. That's how it'll answer you. Play a calibrated game. Wait for things to settle down, to pan a little bit, and then see what instruments we should use to maintain pressure on Bangladesh in the larger interests of good ties between the two countries. In other words, prime diplomacy over any knee-jerk reaction to the provocations that are coming from there. As we are doing now, we are warning them, we are issuing statements on ministries talking about our concerns, hopefully in the hope that the message will sink down and they'll be a little more careful. And those who have propelled the regime change and want to extract something from Bangladesh would also be a little careful in counseling the Bangladesh government that they have to take care of core Indian sensitivities and not provoke a situation where they will not be able to help them to manage the situation. So let's see how it goes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sibal. It's always such a big learning to talk to you, and we appreciate your time. It is a volatile, inflammable situation, but I do really like this idea of understanding Bangladesh not as a peer power, but somebody that we can afford to actually show, show our place in the world to, and also that not so subtle urging to Western powers, in particular to Washington. Don't create a situation that you will soon find even you can't control. Really appreciate your time, Mr. Sibal. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.